how sweet it is. You are now locked into the Bleav and the Hills Hoops podcast here on Bleav Podcast Network. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by the Tar Heel Tribune's R.L. Bynum and special guest host, former UNC big man Pete Chilcutt in the house. You can actually comment on the video on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio, and the audio will be available a little bit later on the Bleav Podcast Networks. We're still here, which means the Carolina Tar Heels are still alive in the 2024 NCAA Men's National Championship bracket. The Hills will be facing the 4-seed Alabama Thursday night in the night game on CBS at 9:39 p.m. is the scheduled tip. We'll get into that. We'll look into the West region, see who's on the other side of that bracket. We'll look at the other brackets too. Any surprises that may have happened. The ACC is a quarter of the Sweet 16. So maybe those that thought that the ACC was in a down year, which feels like that's been the running narrative for the past 3 or 4 years. And then every March, the ACC just kind of represents and poo-poos that whole thing. The ACC with 4 teams making it to the Sweet 16. We'll look at all 4, including North Carolina, and see how they got there and how shocked we are at some of them for getting there. And a whole lot more. Before we get into that, though, a quick word from our sponsors. First, from Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be your #1 source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or your mobile devices. Head to Bet Online today to become part of the team, and remember to use the promo code Bleav, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And with the tournament going on, it's a great opportunity for you guys and your friends to check out Cut. Cut is a new app that's a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's legal in 40-plus states. Cut has customizable odds, tracking capabilities, and an entire social network with group chats, user profiles, and rewards. All payments, no need for Venmo. Promo code's Bleav, BLEAV. Get a 10% welcome deposit bonus. Don't forget the promo code Bleav. Cut, put your money where your mouth is. And where we will put our money is on the Tar Heels, who advanced to the Sweet 16. The Tar Heels have the most Sweet 16 appearances of any school all time here in the tournament. So that's something. They have the most wins, I think, in the tournament all time too at this point. That's something as well. They're going to be facing Bama. Didn't we play Alabama earlier this year?
No, it was last season in Portland. That was the 4 overtime epic.
Right. That was when we got introduced to what's his name? The kid that the Hornets drafted. Oh gosh. Why my mind's going blank this morning?
Brandon Miller.
That's when we got introduced to him. And that was the first loss for the Hills last year, if I'm not mistaken. That was the 4 overtime game, and kind of took the luster off of the being ranked #1 and all that, and then they just slowly started coming down. But that was a dogfight in that game too. I remember some of us fouled out, and yeah, it was a battle. Though we have not seen Bama yet this year. They score a lot, if I'm not mistaken. Give me your thoughts on the Heels here. First, the 90-62 win opening round against Wagner. And then the 85-69 win in the round of 32 against the 9th seed Michigan State, and Tom Izzo, who just can't seem to beat the Carolina Tar Heels no matter what year it is or roster. I have a little tidbit. I don't know for sure if it's true or not. I just want to believe it is based on what happened with Carolina and Michigan State. I'll let you guys go first, though. Thoughts on the Heels 2 games that they played in Charlotte. And what did you take away from it?
Well, first of all, I went to both those games in person. Obviously, the first game was a little bit to be expected, one-sided. The Michigan State game I thought was a really good test early in the tournament because I think Michigan State is really talented. They haven't put it together this year. Quite together for a whole game or a series of games, but they have some really skilled players. They really challenged us in the very first 10 minutes. As you could tell, they were physical, they were intense. They had some they kind of brought the fight to us. And that's a lot of times where teams might fold and kind of go down. And I thought it was a really impressive. They were able to kind of flip that script and just dominate for the last 30 minutes. Really impressed with that performance. We're getting to that time now, though, where I was thinking back to last year with our tournament run, and I think we played Baylor in the Sweet 16. It's just you're going to get tested from here on out. you can't worry about who you're going to play. They're going to be good. They're going to be hot. But I like the tone we set at the end of that Michigan State game going forward. If we can maintain that kind of physical mentality and intensity going on the floor, I think we should be well suited to winning any of these remaining games.
Yeah, I mean, the trend here recently against Pitt State and Michigan State is one that needs to end, of getting off to tough starts. I mean, they overcome it against the Pac, but did okay with the other two. But that's the one thing about toughness. I don't think last season's team would have overcome any of those three probably. And in addition, Wagner hung around too long because of too many turnovers. And then against Michigan State in the first 10 minutes, Carolina wasn't tough enough, and Hubert Davis made sure to let them know that he thought that they weren't tough enough. They have to stop that trend. They can't do that against Alabama. They do that against Alabama, a team that has the best scoring average in the country. That hole could be very deep. So they need to come out with a fire at the beginning and not wait for Hubert Davis to light the fire under them.
The first game, of course, the 1 versus the 16, I was they started out kind of slow, but then they picked it up. And that's kind of been the MO of this Carolina team all year, regardless of who they play. They either come out, hit you with a haymaker right in the beginning, and it just goes all game, or it takes them a little time to get the engine revved. And once it gets going, then they're going. That second game against Michigan State, that's what it felt like there, that they're like, oh, we're in a fight. And once they realized they were in a fight, then they just kind of slowly started taking over. But I did notice there was a little bit more aggression after that timeout from Hubert, that they weren't in the game. And now take all this with a grain of salt. But from what I was told was that before the game, Draymond Green actually told John Henson that the Michigan State players had told him that they were not intimidated by North Carolina. They were actually more intimidated by Mississippi State the game before, and they felt that Carolina was soft and wasn't going to be able to bang with them. That Henson then in turn tweeted that to Armando Bacot. Armando Bacot told the team pregame before they went out into the court. I can't confirm that. That's just what I was told. It sounds cool, so I was like, well, let's use that. let's roll with that and see what happens there. And that would explain certain parts of the game, like the part where it really turned. Armando had that block, and the guy got whistled for a travel or whatever. And Harrison Ingram was right there, and he started screaming, and he was basically screaming in the dude's face. It was Hoggart, I believe it was. He was screaming in his face on the court, and Hoggart's like turned to the ref, like, "Are you going to do anything about this?" And the ref's like, "No," and they kept going. And stuff like that, where they seemed overly attempting to prove that they are not a soft team. And I've been hearing it from Duke fans the past 2 weeks, because I had labeled Duke soft a couple of weeks ago on this podcast and a couple of others. So anytime Duke does something good now, they're like, oh, are they still soft? Are they still soft? I'm like, yes. Yes, you can win basketball games as a soft team. Being soft doesn't mean you're a bad team. It means you don't like the physical contact. You don't like banging in the paint. You don't like to seek contact. And I know Duke won their game. We're going to talk about them in just a bit. Jarrett McCain went off from 3-point range, but Duke fans maybe tempered a little bit. It was 2 double-digit seeds you beat. I'm never one to really sit here and go, oh, look at the path you took to get there, because Lord knows Carolina's gotten some breaks along the way during our treks to the Final Four over the multiple years that we've gone. But Duke fans feel like they're like back. And I didn't watch that game against who were they playing?
James Madison.
I actually picked James Madison on my bracket to win that game, because they were coming in on like a 32-game win streak or something like that. It was the most in the country. And they're an older team. And for whatever reason, Duke just put it on them. I was listening to it on the Westwood One call on the radio in the car all day. Duke wins 93-55. And for their efforts, they're rewarded with an opportunity to play 1 seed Houston in the Sweet 16, which is a completely different conversation altogether. Before we get into the Heels' chances of getting out of their region, let's go and look at the other regions here and what the ACC did, because the ACC put 4 teams in the Sweet 16, along with Carolina. Duke advanced, Clemson advanced. They're also in the South, or excuse me, in the West with Carolina. They'll be playing the 2-seed Arizona and Caleb Love in the early game on Thursday. And NC State, the 11-seed NC State, still in this. They have won 7 straight. Didn't they lose like 3 of their last 4 regular season games or something like that? And then they got in the ACC tournament. They beat Virginia. They beat Duke. They beat us. And now they're still alive. And I think the nation's starting to notice them a little bit. They beat Texas Tech. And then they beat this wacky Oakland team in overtime that I had taken a liking to because I watched that entire Kentucky-Oakland game. The kid, Jack Golke, the kid that was hitting all the threes, like that was Steph Curry-esque, like in the Kentucky game. Like it was to a point where you're kind of rooting for him to get the ball to shoot it, and that's what Steph kind of turned into. They just played their hearts out. And then I'm like, okay, so now you got to play NC State. You might actually get to the Sweet 16. I wasn't thinking about the fact that NC State's looking at like, oh, we get to play Oakland. We might get to the Sweet 16. And that Kentucky team, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because the past couple of years, we've kind of seen college basketball shift back to what it was before, where the older teams are typically the ones that get further. And I thought it was the best game that showed that was the Kentucky-Oakland game in the opening round. Kentucky's a very young team. It felt like they were committing errors that a young team would do, just like weird turnovers and bad shots and stuff like that. Do you feel like college basketball has flipped back to where it was before, where it's easier out of the Sweet 16 to pick the 4 teams that are like the oldest and most experienced teams to possibly get there? Or you think there's still a little bit of ways to go?
I mean, experience does make a difference, and that's how some of these teams that you don't expect to win are winning. And you look at a lot of the Kentucky's mistakes down the stretch; they were freshman mistakes. And obviously Carolina's dealing with a freshman who's had some rough patches in Elliot Cadeau, but he's the only one. So they have the advantage there with a lot of experience elsewhere on the roster.
Yeah, because Zayden High doesn't get in a whole lot. Okorko, I can't say his name. He hardly gets in at all. Okonkwo, he never gets in unless it's like minutes at the end of a game. It's just Cadeau. Cadeau's the only freshman that plays for Carolina this year, which is a bit of a change.
He's set for more than 9 minutes in the second half.
Trimble was playing great.
That was the main reason. Trimble was in there and playing terrific defense. And on Tyson Walker, and that was a big reason I think he was there for that long. I mean, there was a huge stretch where RJ and Seth were really locking down Tyson Walker, and that turned the game. That was one of the many things that turned the game around.
What are your thoughts, Pete?
I agree with that having that leadership, that older guys. You don't have to have them obviously come through your program for the years, but as long as you get some guys on your team that have some experience, you're going to be probably getting that fool's gold during the season with a younger team, winning some games. But when you get to that tournament time when stuff is really crucial, as you said with Kentucky, I think we saw with many other games. Some of these, did you guys watch the Bama Grand Canyon game? I mean, some of those decisions the guys are making are crazy out there. That game was wild, and that was actually really entertaining. But I think you got to have a good staple of older guys, either starting off the bench that have been around. And I'm kind of glad it's going back to that way. I think it's a premium on just for some of these kids to stick around, and I think it's turned out that way anyway with NIL money. They're kind of sticking around for that. But I think it's good for college basketball to have more of an emphasis on sticking around and building your team, building your image, your brand with the team, or however many teams you play for. But it is evident with Kentucky, who is super talented. There's no way they should have lost that game, but it was just experience.
Yeah, the experience just shone through, and I thought that was going to happen to Duke in either the Vermont game or the James Madison game, and it didn't. So I do have to give Duke props for kind of maybe not necessarily figuring this out, but that 93 points, I think it was the most they've scored all year. So
you didn't watch that game. You said you listened to it. I watched
the radio. Yeah,
I watched the beginning, and they just came out, hit them in the mouth, and those guys were hitting those threes early, and that team just never really recovered from that opening stretch. McCain was getting some really good looks. That guy can shoot it, and that's one of the premiums we take when we play him. You got to get those guys covered on the 3-point line and take away those transition threes, but. that's the thing with any of these teams. You got to find a way now in the tournament, to take something away. And if you're experienced, you can deal with it. If you're a younger team, that's where you have some of those problems.
That was the thing too. And every once in a while I kind of forget about it. But this year in particular, in the past couple of years, I feel like teams are taking too many 3-pointers. Like, I get it, 3 is more than 2 and all that stuff. And a lot of these kids grow up now shooting 3 first and not thinking inside out. They think outside in, if at all inside. But watching these games during the weekend, it felt like so many teams were just jacking up 3s. Like, 4 of the 5 guys that are out in the court for you are shooting 3s, like all of them. And like, it's not out of the ordinary for a team to shoot 43s in a basketball game. It's just,
well, get ready for more of that on Thursday night. I'm telling you. You look at Alabama. It's 4-guard lineup, mostly 3-pointers and shots around the rim. I mean, I looked it up. 46.5% of their shots are 3-pointers.
good Lord.
I mean, they've hit at least 10 in 19 games, and let's see, they're 3rd in the country in 3-pointers per game at 11. So,
11
if
made.
you don't like that, you're going to really not like the game on Thursday night because
I do think
for Carolina, it's going to be very important to get them off the 3-point line and defend the ball screens really well. I mean, Mondo's done well when he's switched off against a shorter player, and he's going to have to do that well on Thursday night against Alabama.
I think Carolina's like top 5 or something nationally in 3-point defense percentage or something like that. So it's a matchup that could go Carolina's way. Seth Tribble's going to be very important in this game. I think it's become very apparent he's our best perimeter defender. I guess he's our most athletic player at this point too. Some of those blocks he had Saturday, I was just like, man, Seth Tribble's like 6'1", 6'2", something like that. I'd
still say Jalen Withers is the most athletic, but yeah, Seth.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, and Withers has actually really turned up his game past 2 weeks or so. He'd almost fallen out of the rotation, and I don't know what happened, but now he's really out on defense. Especially, I noticed his contributions. His rebounding has been great, and it feels like most of the national media, they look at Carolina like, okay, you got R.J. Davis, you got Armando Bacot. When they have a third scorer, they're the best team in the country. The problem is they don't have a third scorer every game you can depend on. One day it's Harrison Ingram, the next day it's Cormac Ryan, the next day it's somebody else. So you don't know where it's coming from. I kind of like that. I kind of like the idea that they can spread it around. And Saturday was a great example of that against Michigan State. Ingram was eating. Cormac hit a couple 3s. Tribble played great. Cadeau ran the offense well. You knew RJ was going to get his. Armando didn't get the double-double that everyone's used to him getting in the tournament, but he finished with 18 and 7, I believe. And he bullied in the paint throughout the game. So I felt really good about what Carolina's looking like going forward. Then you have the curious case of the other 2 teams that made the Sweet 16 from the ACC. Starting off with the other side of our bracket, the 6 seed Clemson Tigers. I thought they were going to lose to New Mexico in the opening round. I thought they were overseeded, but took care of business there, beat New Mexico by 20. And then beat Baylor 72-64, the 3 seed in this region, to set up a matchup against Caleb Love and the Pac-12 champ Arizona Wildcats at 7 o'clock on CBS on Thursday. Can Clemson defeat Arizona?
I think they can, and I know it's unpopular. I've been talking to folks about that, and they're like, and Arizona is strong. I think Arizona has a chance of overlooking Clemson for that Carolina game. And I think when you have that Clemson team with those pieces that have been playing well, especially the Chase Hunter along with Gerard and those big guys, they are dangerous, more dangerous than I think people realize. They play really good defense as well, overlooked because of sometimes you look at the offense too much. But I think they have a legitimate chance to kind of squeeze in there to the Final 8, which would be amazing considering we were considering whether they were going to get in at some point, and but I think they have a chance.
R.L.
Yeah, but we all know all too well how the Caleb Love experience goes. We could get a Caleb who's hitting 12 3-pointers, or we could get a Caleb who's 1 of 13 from 3-point range, and that's just so hard to predict. If you get the latter, Clemson really has a good chance. You get the former, it's going to be hard. So That'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think you're going to get the good Caleb, but you never know.
He looked really good at the beginning of the last game.
Yeah.
And I think he tailed off a little bit. But, I think I checked at one point during the year, his stats, he was shooting like a higher percentage than RJ. And, he still gets him up a lot. But I think he's had a great season. And you want to talk about old Caleb and what he did and shooting a lot of shots. And he still kind of takes some shots you probably question.
Yeah.
But, you also got to give him his props. I think he's actually done a great job with that team, and to win the Player of the Year in the Pac-12 as just rolling in there from this situation is pretty impressive.
But then again, in the Pac-12 tournament, I Bleav he had one game with 3 or 4 points. So
yeah.
I'm not sure which one I'd rather face. Like, I don't want to look ahead past Alabama because Alabama averaging 90 points a game or whatever. That's going to be a tough task in itself. But I can't help but think ahead. Like, okay, everyone, CBS, the whole committee, they wanted Carolina, Arizona. That's why they're in the same region to begin with. So that's what they wanted. Do I want to see Clemson again? Like, I mean, it's not that I'm worried about Clemson, but I don't know. Like, bad things happen when you see a team that knows you. Like, they're not intimidated by you. They've seen you a couple times already this year. And plus, Clemson's won in our house like twice. All right, so they're riding with extreme confidence whenever they come across the Tar Heels right now. Not to say that they would beat us, but I don't know if that would be the best matchup. I kind of want to see Carolina, Arizona, but there's a 2 seed for a reason. They're the Pac-12 champs. So it's like, do you want the lower seed, but they're part of your conference and they're a hated foe? Or do you want the bigger game with Arizona?
Big Arizona backing in LA, too. I think that may be more like a road game.
Right. Yeah.
I personally, I would like to take on Clemson. I think we could win. Again, we're going to have tough games no matter what going forward. But I think when you have a team that you have played against from a player standpoint, you have a little more, you know what you're going to face. Some of these guys from Arizona, you probably haven't even seen them on TV at all as a player. You don't watch sometimes those games on the West Coast. So just a little bit of familiarity sometimes I think is a bonus going into a game just as far as getting some confidence. And
well, it's weird, but we'll end this as we go back up to the South region. Again, I mentioned earlier in the game, or in the episode, that Duke advanced to the Sweet 16, and their reward will be taking on the 1 seed Houston Cougars, who have been floating around the number 1 ranking in college basketball for most of this year. Houston survived a feisty Texas A&M team in overtime to advance 100-95. And in their opening round, they beat Longwood by 40, 86-46. Duke is playing very well. Although, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle Filipowski only scored like 3 points in that game, right? Is that correct from what I remember hearing? He only had like 1 shot or something?
In the first game.
In the first game. Okay. So because I was about to say, how in the world did they get the 90-something with Filipowski only scoring 3 points? But Houston and Duke is the late game on Friday, also on CBS. The team I think everyone's surprised is here is the NC State Wolfpack. 7 o'clock tip-off Friday on CBS. They're taking on the 2 seed Marquette. I do a live show. I produce a live show on YouTube at 12:30 during the weekdays. And yesterday I already went on and formally apologized to NC State Wolfpack fans, which felt weird for me to do because I've basically counted them out every step of the way. And they've a friend of mine on the show was like, the hand of Alvano is on this team right now. Cause like, if they can get past this upcoming matchup here against Marquette, now you're looking at a situation where they might end up playing Duke in the Elite 8 if Duke can get past Houston, or it actually sets up a rematch of the 1983 national championship between Houston and NC State in the Elite 8. I know we're all Carolina guys here, and I know how we feel about NC State, but Pete, thoughts on State and what they're doing? Can they keep this going? Like, because it feels sustainable at this point, because now you're just playing 2 games every weekend until the end. So,
watching early State in the early ACC when Burns was playing 10 minutes and looking like he was exhausted, he's playing a lot of minutes now. He is super effective, and the guys they have around him, have really stepped their games. O'Connell and Middlebrook. I like all their pieces as long as they play well. Now, I think with State you have a higher chance of them maybe not playing as well any given time. But if they can keep those pieces kind of playing like they've been playing for the most part, I think they could win this game. I think they're going to have an extremely tough challenge next round if they get there. But like you said, I mean, it's at this point, who knows? I mean, they have some pieces that are you don't deal with a DJ Burns very often, and in a tournament is something that in a one-game situation, he could be a big key factor and get him over a hump. So you just don't know, but I think they got a chance. Whereas we're surprised they're in a tournament at all. They had to win the ACC just to get there, but this run has been really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, for most of the season, if DJ Horn had a bad game, they were cooked. But he didn't score for long stretches, and they still won. But yeah, I rallied from 2 podcasts ago when I picked Clemson as the dark horse to win the ACC tournament, with last week saying that I thought State would make the second weekend. So I'm not really surprised that they're there because they got that mojo going. They feel confident, and like you were saying. DJ Burns got some stamina. He's staying in there longer, not getting into foul trouble. And I don't know, Pete, did you ever have to face a center like that? That just seems like a challenge.
Yeah, there's a guy named Shaq that was probably just as big and maybe a little bit more mobile. But again, it's the same idea. It's almost like it's an entity that you don't face on a daily basis. And these teams, like you can see them when they hit them. Then they realize, oh, like this is a big deal. He was bouncing off some of those guys, and like they're like falling back, and he's just doing a pivot, and they're going back 3 feet. It's impressive that he's able with his touch to score so well around the basket. But there's got to be some way. I think when there's a way to take him out of the game as far as making him post up a little bit farther out and digging the ball out. But he's just something you got to deal with.
It's like guarding a refrigerator, like literally. Like, what are you supposed to do? And his footwork is immaculate. Like what he does, it's almost like he's been practicing ballet or something because his footwork is like nimble, but like he's moving around like this 300-pound left tackle of a body, and he can get to a spot with a spin or whatever. If he's backed you down to the point where you're under the goal, it's barbecue chicken. There's nothing you can do. There's really a whole lot you can do anyway. But if he catches it right there, where all he has to do is turn around or spin or pivot or whatever, that's going in. Like, and NC State's kind of realized, hey, let's ride this. Now they've had other guys. I've been really impressed with Ben Middlebrooks. He's been playing really well too. It's weird for me to compliment NC State. I'm sorry. It's just weird. And there was a stretch in that second game where in overtime against Oakland, shout out to Oakland, who most of the country did not realize is not in Oakland, California. They're in Michigan until they actually won that first game. There was a stretch in overtime where I was expecting NC State to revert to NC State and start doing NC State stuff. And it was right around, I think Middlebrooks fouled out, and something happened right after that where Oakland got the ball back. I'm like, there it is. They just gave him the steal sign. This is when Oakland's about to take this game, and all this is going to be over with NC State. But it didn't happen, and NC State held on. And they won the game. And I'm like, man, is this like a new thing for State? Like, am I going to start rooting for State here? Because I'll be honest, out of that region, I'd rather NC State get to the Final Four than any other team in that region, to be honest. That includes Duke, that includes Houston and Marquette. Like, I'd much rather see NC State in the Final Four than any of them for their fan base. Like, I have friends I went to elementary school with, and the last time they saw NC State win anything was the 1987 ACC tournament. We were in the 5th grade or something like that. So they haven't seen anything for 30 years. And for them, they've been really cool about it online. That's what I respect, because they could be trying to do the Duke thing and like compare it to what Carolina's doing and throw the dirt and all that stuff. The State fans are kind of off to themselves, just celebrating the fact they're still alive. And I love that. I respect that. And I've seen a lot of Carolina fans give them props like, hey, good job, keep it going, representing the ACC and everything else. We have not done that for Duke, and I don't think we will. So we are rooting against Duke, kind of rooting for NC State. I guess I'm gathering we're rooting for Clemson here to beat Arizona and R.L. And then, of course, our game against Alabama. So in a crazy world, we might get a weekend where we get Carolina Clemson Elite 8 on Saturday, Duke NC State Elite Eight on Sunday, which would be insanity. And who knows? Maybe we end up after all the stuff that's happened by the end of this weekend, we see Carolina and a Duke in the Final Four, or Carolina and a State in the Final Four. Who knows? So we thought it was the big one when Carolina and Duke met in the Final Four. What if they ever met for a natty? That's the only thing that would top it, right? Like,
well, I remember the last time I thought it'd be Carolina and State in the Final Four was 1983. State made it. Georgia upset Carolina in the regional final. So
yep. And Dominic Wilkins in Georgia. So man, and this is the first time since 2015 that all the triangle teams, Carolina, State, and Duke, all made the Sweet 16. So for those that thought the ACC was having a down year, maybe Pitt should have got in. Virginia, we all knew it was going to happen to Virginia. Virginia couldn't score all year, so it was only a matter of time before somebody scored more than 60 points and beat Virginia. But they got in. Clemson got in. We didn't even think Clemson was going to get in. Look at what they're doing. So Pitt should have got in. You can make a case for Wake Forest. Do you think the past couple of years, as we're about to get out of here, do you think the past couple of years will change the perception of the committee in terms of where they thought the ACC was as opposed to results in March? Do you think it'll flip it back over to, the ACC is not that bad. They're actually really good.
Probably not.
No.
You can hope, but I'm not too hopeful.
Hey.
And it just I don't know. I think the ACC needs to be proactive. Maybe get out of an 18 game schedule. Give them more opportunities to go out of conference and build up the net rankings.
Hey, we do got Stanford and SMU and Cal coming in next year, so maybe that'll increase our basketball acumen. I can't wait to see those 10 o'clock tip-offs, Carolina, Stanford out on the West Coast on a Tuesday night. So we'll see how this plays out. But we got to get out of here. Again, Carolina continues this trek 9:39 p.m. on Thursday, the 1 seed in the West, taking on Alabama. For those keeping track of the rest of the ACC, the 6th seed in that bracket is Clemson. They're taking on the Tail Glove and the 2 seed Arizona Wildcats. That's the first game in the West. That's 7 o'clock on CBS this Thursday. And then you've got, actually all these games are on CBS, which is great. The next day on Friday, NC State, the 11 seed in the South, taking on the 2 seed Marquette at 7 o'clock on CBS. And then the nightcap there is the 1 seed Houston taking on the 4 seed Duke, 9:39 p.m. tip off there. So your Thursday's set, your Friday is set. I was trying to remember this too. Didn't they used to do it where, like, before it was on like True TV and TBS and TNT, wasn't the Sweet 16 weekend the setup the same way as the opening weekend where they started playing at noon and like all the games were on CBS? Like they basically went through a region like in the afternoon and then they had one at night and then the next day it was the same. I'm trying to remember how it worked because, or they had 2 games on.
Seems like it's been a night two night double headers for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I remember as a kid that it felt like it just redid it again, Sweet 16 wise, where somebody's played at noon, someone's at 2, someone's at 4, and like you kind of went through them that way, and there would be like 2 games at noon, and based on where you lived, region wise, CBS would give you that game or this game, and they would go back and forth. But now with it on 4 channels, you can do that yourself. So, and shout out to Max. I didn't realize Max was going to have, or HBO was going to have all these games. They moved it off of the app. They moved it off. Well, the app's still there, but it's easier now just to go to HBO Max. You can catch all these games that are on CBS right there. So I've been watching them all through there, and it's been easy peasy. So you don't have to worry about that this weekend, though, because all these games are on CBS. So you can catch all of them there. We'll be back next week to recap and hopefully celebrate a Final Four appearance for the Tar Heels. They already have the most all time. Let's see if they can add to that. And we'll just examine the carnage and see what happened here over Sweet 16 weekend. So for R.L. Bynum, for special guest host Pete Chilcutt, I'm Desmond Johnson. You've been watching the Bleav in Hills Hoops podcast here on the Bleav Podcast Networks, brought to you by Bet Online. We'll see you guys next week.